Guys, it finally happened. Sam Bankman-Fried testified under oath before the judge and the jury, and I fought my way into the main courtroom to watch it go down in person. Not gonna lie, I think Sam's testimony actually started off pretty well, but then became more and more questionable as we progressed. So let's get into it. Kicking off, Sam was able to express some remorse to the jury, stating that things ended up the opposite of what he intended, and that unfortunately, a lot of people got hurt, customers, employees, and the company ended up in bankruptcy. But he denies that he defrauded anyone, and he denies that he took customer funds. He was able to give his rebuttals and excuses and explanations for pretty much everything that happened, ranging from FTX's seemingly excessive marketing spend to his allegedly carefully crafted appearance. He was also able to explain that in the early days, Alameda was the primary market maker of FTX, which might explain why Alameda maybe got some little special privileges early on, and that maybe they weren't initially put in place for any nefarious reasons, like stealing FTX customer funds. He was also able to dip into his little margin trading excuse, stating that he believed the money Alameda was borrowing from FTX was coming from the collateral of customers who agreed to participate in margin trading, or assets earning interest on the platform. He said that those funds on FTX were lent out to traders, including Alameda, and essentially that, Alameda was just another customer of FTX. He continued that in general, FTX didn't have restrictions on what people could do with funds they would borrow as long as they believed the risk was being managed. He said, "We didn't care if users withdrew funds to buy muffins, for example. Or, maybe making hundreds of millions of dollars in investments in venture capital or political donations or, charitable causes. But, who knows? Don't care. You can buy muffins too." So I thought Sam getting a chance to give the jury his perspective on some of these issues might have actually been pretty useful to him. But, after Sam got to make his initial points, give his side of the story, give his explanations, we did get into some iffier territory where I began to think, all right, this feels questionable. It started to become a he said, she said, or a he said, where Sam basically gave his retelling and his version of events of very key pivotal moments and conversations that came up in Caroline Ellison, Wang, Adam Yedidia, and Nishad Singh's testimonies. And it started to feel to me like if you're saying that everyone around you is either sort of lying or misremembering or misinterpreting some very pivotal conversations, then, maybe not everyone around you is lying, maybe you are lying. When everyone is under oath, but there are two very different versions of events, one of you is obviously lying. But again, I'd rather not tell you what to believe, I'd rather just sort of present both sides of the stories. Brief pause, but this coverage is made possible by support from Evertus. Evertus is the first company in the world to provide insurance solutions for crypto and mining infrastructure. Evertus is also a Lloyd's of London cover holder, which means their policies are A+ rated. Ask your broker how Evertus can help you manage your risk and protect your enterprise, or visit evertus.com. Now back to the video. So let's start with Sam's explanation of one of Alameda's special privileges called Allow Negative, which essentially allowed Alameda Research to withdraw funds that it didn't even have and allowed them to maintain a negative balance on FTX. Sam claimed that he never specifically asked for this privilege to be put in place, but instead claimed that in 2020, because FTX was growing so rapidly, that they experienced some growing pains with their risk engine. Apparently, in 2020, there was an auto-deleveraging event in which a user with a relatively small position was erroneously liquidated multiple times, which caused liquidations that should be in the thousands of dollars to apparently spiral into the millions or trillions of dollars. And these erroneous liquidations then caused Alameda to go underwater, which would then trigger the final phase of their risk engine, which was socializing losses of all customers on the platform. So basically, Sam said that letting this go unfixed would be catastrophic for not only the platform, but also for its customers. Sam says that he, Gary, and Nishad discussed how to prevent this from happening in the future. Sam claims he proposed having some system in place to catch erroneous liquidations of Alameda's account, and that maybe it would be an alert or a delay or something of that form. He said that Gary and Nishad told him they implemented a feature of that sort, and that at the time, I couldn't have told you the details of it or its name. I now believe I know what that feature was. Allow Negative. But this seems inconsistent with Gary and Nishad's version of events. Nishad testified that in 2019, Sam gave him the project of making a page to allow transferring forms of FTT such that balances of the account that the transfer was coming from could end up negative. Apparently, though, Gary Wang was the one who suggested the specific implementation in detail. But one of my main issues with these diverging narratives is the fact that the timelines don't add up. In fact, during Nishad Singh and Gary Wang's testimonies, we actually viewed a GitHub screenshot of when Allow Negative was first implemented. And as evidenced by the screenshot, it was first implemented on July 31st, 2019. Whereas in Sam's retelling, it was implemented in response to an auto deleveraging event in 2020. So that just doesn't add up. I can give Sam a bit of the benefit of the doubt here because Nishad also testified that there were changes made to Allow Negative in 2020 such that it could then go negative without any balance, so not bounded by its collateral limit, and there was a change added such that it would never be liquidated. I guess theoretically Sam could have just been referring to these changes, but otherwise he claimed not to have even known what Allow Negative was. So, bit of an inconsistency on that one, just saying. Moving along, Nishad Singh testified that at the end of 2021, he was tasked with the project of making FTX's revenue appear higher. Apparently, FTX's revenue was calculated to about $950 or $960 million for the year, but Sam wanted to bring this above the $1 billion mark. Nishad testified that Sam proposed beginning to essentially take fees for Serum staking, because apparently this would bring FTX's revenue over the $1 billion line. According to Nishad, this conversation took place on December 30th or 31st, but apparently Sam told him to make it appear as though they had been getting charged throughout the year, so to backdate the transactions associated with paying this fee. The goal here obviously being to increase FTX's stated revenue. Sam had a slightly different version of events in his testimony. He said that at the end of 2021, both he and Ramnik Arora, the head of product, separately calculated FTX's revenues, and Ramnik ended up with a number slightly below $1 billion, while he ended up with a number above $1 billion. Sam said he wanted FTX's revenue above $1 billion because it's just a round number. So according to Sam, he merely asked for a recalculation, and he claims that Nishad proceeded to tell Sam that he had dealt with it. Sam says he asked Nishad what that even meant. You know, because he had nothing to do with this, he didn't ask for this. Apparently Nishad told him there were Serum staking rewards that were another $50 million or so in revenue, and that FTX was charging a fee on the interest payments made for people staking Serum, and that was contributing to FTX's revenue, and that got them over $1 billion. Sam claims that in reaction to this, he was a little surprised. I had not thought of Serum staking related things at all. I had not been anticipating getting that as a response. I had been anticipating either that no, there was no other revenue, or yes, there were, other interest payments with respect to some program that I had thought more about, or maybe OTC related things. In other words, it looks like these Serum staking rewards were indeed backdated, but Nishad claims that Sam directed him to do so, and Sam claims I had nothing to do with that. Nishad said that he dealt with this on his own, and it looks like he must have independently backdated them. So it's a little bit tough to know who to side with on this one. Obviously, one of them is lying. It seems that Sam is the one who wanted FTX's revenue above $1 billion, so he did have incentive to ask Nishad Singh to backdate those documents. But I guess one could argue that Nishad Singh might have wanted to impress or please his boss, Sam Bankman-Fried, so was determined to find a way to make sure FTX's revenue went above $1 billion to please Sam Bankman-Fried, even if it meant independently backdating those documents without anyone's direction. Personally, it feels unlikely to me that Nishad Singh would make a decision like that without even asking or running it by Sam Bankman-Fried. So, personally, I think I gotta side with Nishad on this one. And the thing is, I think if anyone on the jury decides that Sam is lying about even one of these retellings of events, they're likely to assume he's lying about all of them. Okay, moving on to Sam essentially claiming Caroline Ellison is lying. So, in short, Alameda used lots of loans from third-party lenders, which included Genesis. Well, in the summer of 2022, Genesis asked Caroline Ellison, the then CEO of Alameda Research, if they could see a balance sheet. Caroline testified that she initially prepared a normal balance sheet and sent it to Sam via Signal. But at the time, their balance sheet didn't look so good because they were borrowing billions of dollars from FTX customers. Caroline claims she said to Sam, "I think it looks bad. I don't think we can send this to Genesis. Do you agree?" And apparently Sam said, "Yeah, that sounds right." Caroline claims that Sam then suggested she prepare some alternative ways of presenting the information and sending them to him. Caroline says she understood him to be directing her to come up with ways to conceal the things in our balance sheet that we both thought looked bad. So she prepared a spreadsheet with 7 alternative balance sheets that they could possibly send. Basically, Caroline argues that she prepared these misleading alternative balance sheets under the direction of Sam Bankman-Fried and claims that Sam ultimately chose which one looked best to send off to lenders. Sam, however, has a different retelling of this event. In court, we pulled up Caroline's spreadsheet with 7 balance sheet alternatives. In his testimony, Sam says that she sent me this as a balance sheet she was planning to send to Alameda's lenders. The prosecutor pointed out, he's saying this balance sheet. There's a full government exhibit. He's referring to a single tab, so I would ask for clarification because the exhibit appears to contain 6 or 7 parts and the witness is testifying as if the exhibit is one thing. So basically, Sam was trying to play it off as if he only saw one of these tabs and one balance sheet when in the document there were 7. So Sam says, that's what I recall, yes. It may have been part of a larger spreadsheet, but he further claims that he does not recall talking about each of the entries on the spreadsheet, and that he recalls her saying she was tentatively planning on sending something like this out, and that she thought about a few different ways of constructing it. He says, I don't remember any detail being discussed about that, and I remember looking it over and saying it seemed reasonable to me. And I'm sorry, but Sam, I feel like you can only use the I'm stupid, I really wasn't paying attention thing a few times, and in a pivotal moment like this, which I think he knew at the time was a pivotal moment, it just doesn't make sense to me that Sam would say, oh, I didn't even think to click through all the different tabs on this spreadsheet. I didn't even see. And that's not to say that Caroline Ellison is innocent here, because it looks like she was actually the one who did the dirty work and made these spreadsheets, so she looks very bad. But Sam's retelling just doesn't quite check out to me, doesn't quite add up. This is another one where I'm sorry, I gotta give it to Caroline. We then get to September 2022 when Sam Bankman-Fried wrote a document contemplating shutting down Alameda. I've already told this story from the perspectives of other witnesses in other videos, but in short, Nishad suggested they not shut down Alameda as a whole, but shut down Alameda on FTX, and relayed that to do so, they would have to close down all of their accounts on FTX. Apparently, Caroline Ellison told Nishad Singh that that was impossible, and Nishad learned that it was impossible because Alameda was borrowing so many billions of dollars of FTX customer funds. In Sam's retelling, he was just merely toying with the idea of shutting down Alameda. Then he just sent the document to Gary and Nishad and said, roughly, just throwing this out here, interested in your guys' takes on it. When asked what their reaction was, he said, they took a little bit to discuss it. They said they were talking to Caroline about it as well, and they ultimately came back and said they didn't think it was a good idea. When asked, did they tell you why? Sam says, I, at the time, did not feel confident that I had gotten a clear reason why. I do believe that they said something about it being difficult to shut down Alameda. And he says that Caroline apparently also didn't think they should shut down Alameda. And it sounds like Sam is claiming he just kind of left it at that and moved on with his life. So basically he's claiming that he was not privy to these conversations and that he was not aware that Alameda couldn't be shut down because of all of the FTX customer funds they were borrowing. And I'm sorry, but again, this just doesn't sound believable. Sam was concerned enough to actually write up a document about potentially shutting down Alameda and send it to Gary and Nishad, but is basically claiming he just got a, no, we shouldn't shut it down, didn't ask any questions, didn't pry any further, and just moved on with his life. I get it, Sam, you're very busy, but I'm sorry, it just does not sound plausible. We then get to a fateful balcony conversation in which Nishad Singh testified that he finally confronted Sam. So I'm just gonna play this clip of Nishad's retelling of this event.
He understood that this $13 billion of borrowing had to be from FTX customer funds because FTX simply did not have that much money. He brought this to Sam Bankman-Fried's attention and testified that Sam seemed unsurprised. So apparently late that evening, Nishad spoke to Sam on the balcony of the Orchid penthouse. Nishad was pacing around the balcony while Sam was reclined on a chair. Nishad began stating, Caroline's really freaked out by the NAV situation, or NAV, net asset value. Sam responded, I'm not sure what there is to worry about. NAV is great by any measure. Nishad asked, what about the borrows we can't repay? Sam responds, right, that. We are a little short on deliverables, or in other words, apparently assets that can be repaid. Nishad asks, how much are we short by? Sam responds, wrong question. Real question is, how much can we deliver? I think $5 billion. Given weeks, substantially more. Given more weeks, substantially more. This has been taxing me for 5 to 10% of my productivity over the last year.
Meanwhile, in Sam's testimony, his version of events notably lacks a lot of description. He says that Nishad was very concerned about a number of topics. About liabilities, Sam says, "I don't remember it being specified more clearly than what I'm about to say. That liabilities had gotten far larger than they used to be, or than we thought they were. He said he didn't know what to do and wanted my thoughts on the scale of liabilities. And I think he may have thrown out a number of 8 billion or so, when in reality that number was about 13 billion or so." Sam claims he effectively said that he was also concerned about Alameda's liabilities and that they were larger than he would have wanted them to be as well, larger than he thought they were. But he felt Alameda was still quite net positive in value, and its net asset value was around a positive $10 billion, that it was still making money trading. On the topic of liabilities, that's what I remember him saying. So again, Nishad's account is very detailed and very believable, and then Sam's is sort of vague, high level, and he shirks responsibility. He claims he wasn't aware of Alameda owing $13 billion of customer funds. Again, I obviously was not present for this conversation, but it just feels to me that Nishad's feels a little bit more plausible. And then we get to Sam's old friend, Adam Yedidia. In the summer of 2022, Adam discovered that Alameda owed $8 billion to FTX and had a conversation with Sam about whether or not Alameda was able to pay that back. According to Adam, this conversation took place at a paddle tennis court. Adam testified that the conversation began with him bringing up the large debt owed by Alameda to FTX, asking something like, "Are things okay?" In response, Sam said something like, "We were bulletproof last year, but we're not bulletproof this year." In response to that, Adam asked, "How long until we're bulletproof again?" And Sam responded, "I'm not sure, maybe something like 6 months to 3 years. Adam said, "Are things going to be okay?" And Sam said, yeah, or apparently something reassuring. When asked about this conversation, though, Sam didn't even remember where it took place. Even amongst us court attendees, we refer to this conversation as the paddle tennis conversation. So Sam apparently having no recollection of where this conversation even took place honestly felt like a little ding to his credibility on this one in the first place, because if we're weighing who remembers this conversation more accurately, Adam versus Sam, it already looks like Adam remembers this much more clearly. But anyway, in Sam's retelling, Adam wasn't asking about the $8 billion that Alameda owed to FTX customers. According to Sam, Adam was merely broadly asking what Alameda's risk profile looked like after a market crash. Because, you know, there were market crashes in May and June of 2022. So according to Sam, he was just referring to those market crashes and was in effect saying that Alameda was doing decently but was no longer bulletproof because of the market crashes, not the billions of dollars of FTX customer funds they owed. So I'm sorry, I feel like this was kind of a long video, but there was a lot of going back and forth between old notes of old testimonies and Sam's new retelling of events in his new testimony. Again, I will say that I initially thought Sam's testimony was starting off pretty strong. I thought it was probably effective for him to get a chance to explain his side of the story about some of the marketing spend, explaining the origins of some of the special privileges to show that they weren't initially put in place for nefarious purposes, and overall demonstrating a bit of remorse, a little bit of humanity, etc. But I did personally feel that when he began to sort of give his retelling of these very key pivotal moments and conversations, and since the jury was literally in the room listening to everyone else's testimonies and all of them sounded very credible and all lined up with one another, Sam sort of attacking the credibility of each of these testimonies turned it into a he said, she said, where there's two different narratives here and one of you has to be lying. And personally, I feel the jury is a little bit more likely to believe the prosecution's witnesses over Sam, who obviously at this point has the most incentive to claim that he doesn't have responsibility and place blame on others. And I think from the jury's perspective, if they think he's lying about even one of these retellings, they're likely to assume he was lying about all of them, which very much damages the credibility of his entire testimony. And I'm no lawyer, but might open him up to potentially getting in trouble for perjuring himself. I would like to reiterate, though, that I was not present for these conversations, so I am curious to hear who you think is telling the truth and who you think is lying. What a fun little game we can play. But anyway, Sam is actually not done testifying. He will be continuing on Monday, and then the cross-examination will start. And to be honest, I think the cross-examination is going to be way more interesting than Sam's direct testimony. All of the questions that Sam has answered so far have been questions from his own lawyer, which I assume to some degree were pre-rehearsed, so Sam knew what was coming. But the cross-examination is when Sam is actually going to get grilled. So I will be back in court on Monday, and I'll be sharing updates here on YouTube, on Twitter, on Substack, etc. So if you'd like to follow along, feel free to. If not, it's fine. I will warn you that I will be incredibly sleep deprived because the past few days I've literally woken up at 1 and 2 a.m. so that I could fight my way into the main courtroom because I've been wanting to watch this go down live in the flesh. So I will be posting more recaps here. Also, again, thank you to Evertus for making this coverage possible. To learn more about how Evertus's insurance products and services can help crypto companies protect their enterprise and manage their risk, ask your broker or visit evertus.com. Anyway, I love you all so very much, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon. Bye!